Welcome everyone to our unofficial podcast. And a big welcome to Annette. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I want to call you a finance coach, but I feel like you're a lot more than that, in that your expertise is with finance, property. You're also a yoga teacher, very health conscious, have a really wonderful holistic awareness of life as well. So working with you is, yes, finance, but the context is so much more than just money. So if you can think of like holistic health, but holistic finance, that is pretty much what Annette does and offers. And it's not many people that I actually will say she's an expert. She's an expert, guys. This is her jam, and she has so much knowledge and experience and her own success in this field as well, in a variety of different ways, in helping people, in the impact that she makes, in her own discoveries that she's made along the way with financial investments and things. So we're very, very grateful you could come here today, Annette, and answer my questions and share your knowledge.
Thank you so much, Sammy. You're an absolute gem, and always give me such a wonderful introduction, and I hope I can live up to some of that. So I'll do my best. I have to pretend no one else is here and it's just you and me talking, because often, so many gems come out when we do talk and we're like, oh, we should record that. So yes, here we are.
Yeah, so exactly. This is I think most of the work that we do together comes from our personal chats together, and we're like, we need to share this. So my first question is, and this isn't meant to be abstract, this is just meant to offer some context around what money means to you, other than currency. What does money mean to you? What does it represent? Can you share a little more?
Yeah, look, great question. And one of the things I do is try to define what money is. And if you just step back from it for a minute and just think about it in its plain context, in that it's simply an exchange for value, and it's the value that we provide to others, and then money will flow to us, and then money flows out when when other people are providing value to us. And so money is designed to be in constant circulation, and of course problems can begin when it flows out more than it flows in, right? Which is common, if not the norm nowadays, but that's another topic. But for me personally, money represents opportunity to help others, because like you, I'm in a service-based role, and I am at my best and do my best work when I'm actually helping other people. It's the most rewarding thing in the world. But also for me, a level of security. And obviously there is no entire security in this world, but there is a certain level of material security that we're all looking for and wanting and needing. And so for me, that provides, or that ticks that box. And choice about who I hang out with, where I spend my time, who I work with, rather than I have to do all these things, or whether I have to do something that I don't like and that I'm in disharmony with. So for example, if I do something because of money that goes against my values or my core being, then I create disharmony in the body, and that's where health issues start to arise. And so there is such a correlation between your relationship, your health and your wealth, and your relationship between money and health. So I find that the two work, they're sort of synchronized together in that respect. So yeah, choice, freedom, flexibility, security, and all of the above and more.
Yeah, amazing. So what prompted your journey with finance, with property? So I think, like if you can just go back and give us a little bit of context, how you got into this line of work even.
Well, it's funny because, I don't know if you've ever done any of Anthony Robbins type stuff, but I read one of his books one day, and one of the things that stuck with me is that we are usually either going towards pleasure or away from pain, right? There are sort of one of our core fundamentals. And for me, it was more about running away from something I didn't want rather than running towards what I did want. And I knew what I didn't want. And I knew, I don't know how, but from an early age, I just knew that even though I did a lot of study and we were taught to get a good job, go to uni, all that sort of stuff, I knew from quite an early age that I didn't want to be a slave to the system, swap time for money and be miserable, which was kind of what happened to me after uni, because I'd done my degree and I got a job, and I was like, oh, is this it?
Is this it? Yeah.
Surely there's more to life than this.
And what was your degree?
I kind of ran away. I was like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. There's got to be something else. And obviously my quest was more than just financial, spiritual, and you know, there's a whole other side to that question. But ultimately, my view was quite simplistic 20 years ago. I wanted to travel back to the UK whenever I wanted to see my family. Because my family meant more to me than any money in the world. So I didn't want to be trapped in a system that I felt I didn't have freedom. So freedom was a big thing for me back then. And also, I suppose I'd learned through watching my dad a little bit about money, because he was really good with money, and he kept a budget, and he came home from work, and because I wanted to hang out with him, I used to go into his office and I'll be like, what are you doing? And he would tell me everything, and I'm just reconciling my accounts, and I'm looking at my investments. Oh, what's an investment? And you know, I just had some interest, and he just made it fun and said, oh, you know, if you want, I can buy some shares and just a small portfolio, and we can look at it. And just so he taught me a few fundamental things, and for me, I was just interested in it. So then I went on to do a diploma in business and finance, and then I did a business degree. Right. And I just knew I wanted to do something in business. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted to be in business. I love business. You know, I didn't want to be an employee. I wanted to own a business. I wanted to be self-employed, run my own show, and be Miss Independent, right? And that's partly because of my upbringing. You know, I didn't have a mum growing up, and so I kind of had to look after myself, and I had to learn to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. So I guess I had that innate sense of independence and not wanting to rely on anybody else, because I'd seen, you know, those things in my personal life that affected how I viewed the world. You know, I didn't want anyone else to be able to dictate how things were going to be, and that was as a result of sort of some of my childhood and things like that. So when I met my husband, he was really driven for different reasons, and we both had a passion for business and investing, and he said, I want to start investing in property. And I was like, oh wow, that sounds really cool. What does that mean? You know? And we went along and we looked into it, and we decided to invest together. We'd only been together for 6 months. It's quite random, and we ended up buying a property together, investment, and we kept renting where we were. And I employed some really good personal some personal finance tips that I'd been reading up. I got all the books I could get to read. I started reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. I started understanding what an asset was versus a liability. And I realized that I had to pay myself first in order to create a deposit so I could buy this property, because it was like, wow, that's so cool. And, you know, it was a tangible thing, whereas shares to me weren't tangible. You know, you're buying some shares or a piece of paper in somebody else's business and relying on them to run the business for you. Again, I was like, oh, I'm not really in control of that. Whereas if it's a house, it's like I can touch it and feel it, and it's there. And, you know, I'm providing a service. I'm providing somewhere for someone to live that maybe can't afford their own home, or, you know, so I saw the value proposition in it. I saw the investment proposition in it. And to say the least, I then got a job in finance because it was kind of like a natural progression for me. And we set up our own business, but it was absolutely awful because it was so scary. I didn't know anything about how to run a business, let alone how to run a profitable business. I didn't know anything about how to manage tax, BAS, GST, all the stuff that comes with running a business that nobody tells you. You know, you've got these gung-ho ideas. You're like, I'm going to set this business up. I want to help all these people. And then yet you're the one sort of signing off on things to say that all your books are true and correct, and yet you have no idea. So I guess I learned the hard way, and I just basically had to do what I could to try and find a way to make it work, really. And I suppose because I was at a young age, I didn't really have anything to lose. Whereas if I was starting that now, and, you know, you become a lot more risk averse as you get older too. And so I think I had time on my side because I was young. You know, I was in my 20s, and I started the business with my husband, and we were like, we're going to make it work. We've got nothing to lose. Let's just make it work. We had the energy, we had the right mindset behind it. We were on the same page, and that's another thing in relationships. Right. You know, it's really hard if you're not on the same page. So it's all about finding out what your visions are and making sure that you can somehow make it work together. And so for us, it just gelled. That worked really well for us. And yeah, we just saw we had some mentors as well along the way. But I certainly didn't. I had mentors with property investment, but I didn't have any mentors with regard to managing my own money, managing a business. You know, I found it really stressful, and I literally didn't have enough money to pay the rent, you know, for the business premises at the end of the month. And I was just in tears every month, actually, to be really honest with you.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing that, because that was going to be my next question. What was the psychological experience through this? Because this is something that our regular Live to Serve community will knows that I like, let's pull the curtains back. Let's not talk about the glitz and the glamour and the success only. Let's talk about all the experience, because I think that's really refreshing for people to hear, is that you didn't just go bloop. It was like, it was gritty, and it was challenging on every level to go through that. And I think that's a really important acknowledgement, because if people go into, okay, I'm going to learn to do, you know, some of these strategies, I'm going to employ some of these strategies, and then it gets hard, or it's not easy, or they have to go without in some way, or like you said, like brought to tears because this feels like it's not working, but actually it is. You just have to dig deep, and you have to have some grit, and you have to find it in yourself and find a way forward through the challenging times to build it up to a place where it is, you know, where things start working in your favor in a little bit more of a harmonious manner.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And the biggest thing, like you said, is you've got to dig deep. And it's actually in those times where your true resilience starts to come out and starts to shine, and that is where the gold is. Nobody wants to go through it, but that is actually where the gold is when you are at your lowest point and you can bounce back from that, because you can prove to yourself that just because you're in this situation, which is temporary, it doesn't mean that you have to stay there. And it means, right, I've got to dig deep, I've got to find the resources, and I'm going to find a way to get myself out of this. And that was my attitude towards it. Because I didn't want to be a failure, and I didn't want people to laugh at me. And I didn't want my family to think, well, you know, you've done this degree and you've gone around halfway around the world, and what are you falling on your face, you know? And so there was obviously some pride in there too, that I had to make a go of this. I have to make this work, you know. And you know, because you tell everybody when you're young, you're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you're quite dead set on what you're trying to do, you know. And we had, you know, our family were quite supportive in that. I thought they were probably like, they didn't really know what we were doing. I mean, we didn't share everything, obviously, because it's a personal journey. But it sounds, I don't want to sound like bigging myself up, but I just wish I'd met someone like me back then that could have helped and guided me, because there is no one to do that. And you know, you think, oh, my accountant might be able to give me some of these tips, but actually they don't. You know, pretty much they won't give you the answers unless you know the questions to ask. So you know what questions to ask.
That is the nutshell of why I learned, like why I went through a coaching certification for health, because I just found, like, if people don't know what they don't know, and then if they don't know, then they don't have the right questions to ask, so they can't have those realizations. But through your coaching process, you have the knowledge, and you can also help, you know, people, guide people along the way and help them have those realizations. Anyway, fantastic.
So that's where it started. So at the age of 26, we bought our first property, through going without, actually. We were living in a place, $100 a week rent. We were driving a shitty old beat up car. We didn't go out really. We went to Indian Home Diner, and we spent $11 on a shared plate. That was our date night kind of thing, you know. So that's kind of,
you really did it
beginnings. And there's still a part of me that's really frugal, you know, because I've trained myself to be like that. So now I'm actually quite decisive and disciplined about where I do spend my money. But at the same time, I can be, you know, there are times I can be frivolous, but at the same time, I know when to reel it in, you know. As well. So and as I say, it's just through those experiences that's where the resilience comes from. And it's the resilience that's going to get you through hard times. You know, and there will be hard times, you know, but on the other side of that, better times, good times, and times that you can feel inspired and feel like, this is actually working. But it takes time, you know. Like, I've been doing this 20 years now. You know, our business is 20 years old. We started investing in 2002. And there have been times where I just wanted to sell everything and just run away again. But no, that's not the answer, right? You think grass is always greener, and it's like, I could just sell everything tomorrow and go and live on an island. Wouldn't that be amazing? But it's not reality. It's not, and eat
you probably get
coconuts.
bored. I think you get bored.
You get bored, right? So that's where my coaching coming back. So I'm like, I need to be in service and help others, because as I said before, it sounds a bit cheesy, but that's where I get my most satisfaction, is actually seeing progress in others and working with people who actually want to make a change and ask questions and be open to learning, and not being scared and not being afraid, and having someone that can hold their hand like a big sister. I want to be your big sister and help you to do, or if you've got questions, I'm more than happy to answer it to the best of my ability. But having said that, I also need to make a disclaimer that I don't give financial advice. So, if you want to say, I've got 10 grand, where do I invest it? I can give you some general guidance, but certainly I don't give financial advice. I just have to make that clear. But I've got 20 years of my own practical experience, plus all my education and my qualifications to work in this space with finance and property. And so I've got real world experience, and I think no course, no education can really teach you that. You have to go through life,
the nuances of really living through it all. Which actually, I think this is kind of a nice segue into my next question regarding, I think a lot of us have grown up, rightly so. I think, you and I have talked about this too, with around privacy, around our own financial situation. I think is really healthy and fine, and we don't need to put everything out on the table to the world. But in most cases, like your situation was, I would say, unusual in that your dad kind of took you through a bit of financial education, whereas when I grew up as a child, and I know many of my friends that we talk about this all the time, that finances was just for the adults, it was just for your parents. So we grew up and it was taboo to talk about finances. You don't ask anything about finances you don't know. And then you get spat out into the world as a young adult. And it's the single thing, no matter where you go, where you live in the world, where you are on the socioeconomic ladder status, you have to deal with money, currency of some kind, no matter what culture you're in. And we don't really get to learn much about it. So yeah, I guess it's just a question around the value of financial education and financial literacy, in that, being able to have some kind of financial education. Financial hardship is one thing, and, having to deal with and navigate finances in day-to-day living is another thing. And I think because we grow up with a lack of education, because we grow up with the messaging that we don't talk about it, then you get out into the world, you have to deal with money on a daily basis, whether you like it or not, ongoing, your whole lifetime, right up until the grave. And so a lot of people, I think, they're under this unconscious hold of money, but they don't really know how to even express or articulate what's so unsettling about money. Yes, money can be hard if you don't have enough of it. And I think on the other end of the spectrum too, if you have too much of it, it can cause other kinds of problems as well. But yeah, can you speak on that, in that, for whatever reasons, we don't have this open relationship or understanding or education with money. And so it does feel like it's something that we don't really have a place. It doesn't have a clear place in our life, and yet it governs a lot of our life. And therefore we feel, you know what I'm getting at?
I totally know what you're getting at. And it baffles me to this day that you hit the nail on the head. We have to deal with money from the word go.
Whether we like it or not, it's not, it's like you can't fly to the other side of the world and find a culture that doesn't deal with some kind of financial exchange. Even in a third world country, you cannot find a place where we don't deal with money, and yet it's unusually taboo, or there's not an open education about it,
And more to that is that there's a lot of shame around it. There's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame. And that's actually really heartbreaking, because that shame and that guilt is what causes relationship breakdown in most cases, in a lot of cases. And it's really heartbreaking to see, because, you know, two people come together, and or even, you know, mother and son, or it doesn't matter what the relationship is, doesn't necessarily have to be an intimate relationship, but that's the obvious one, because you're coming from a different family dynamic, you're coming from different conditioning, and you're coming together, you're trying to make something work, and yet you don't even know or know what your thoughts are, or what programs are running you subconsciously, and this person doesn't know, and you're trying to make something work. And so it really needs to be something that we can open up about and have an adult conversation about. And it's particularly challenging for women, you know, because traditionally the man has been the one to earn the money and the woman's the homemaker, you know, in past times. And now, you know, the female has to work 2 jobs and 3 jobs and provide and do everything and wear all these different hats. And so it's a really challenging time. And I met somebody yesterday even this lady that said that when her father died, her mother had no idea about his money, no idea about the fact that he had assets and things like that. And the house was left to the son, so her brother, and she didn't even know. Her and her sister didn't even know, and it just directly went to the male of the family. And it's just like, wow, you know, we're still dealing with that kind of generational mentality. And so we're up against it, right? So as a female in today's world, or even a male, it's our job and our responsibility to have our own money, to be good with money, to learn about money, to understand money, not to be afraid of money. And that is a big challenge, because it's scary, right? And you've got to start to recognize what those patterns and those belief systems are that are running your story. So, you know, we think we're in control, right? We like to think we're in control, but ultimately research shows that we're running on our subconscious belief patterns and systems. So the first thing to do is just step back and go, well, what is my belief system around money? You know, and so I take people through this, because money is very emotional. So mindset around money and teaching people what their financial identity is a really crucial step to learning. Well, I've actually got a really warped sense of money, and I need to do something about that if I want to move forward and have a harmonious and healthy relationship with money. So we look at that. We look at unpacking some of that subconscious patterning, and that tends to come through our generational passing down from generation to generation. And we tend to emulate our parents because that's all we know, or society at large, or our friends, depending on who we hang out with when we're kids. And all that sort of stuff, you know, the comparisons that start to happen, and not being able to talk about it and things like that is very damaging. And I think it's really good to have an open and honest conversation with your children about it, when that, you know, time sensitive based on their age and things like that, and where you're at. But if you don't know what your patterns are, you are at the point of, you know, passing that down the line. And so even more as a parent, having that responsibility to know what your own patterning is, and see if you can sort of break some of those maybe less conducive or healthy habits that you've got towards
and
money.
Can I just share an example on that too? Because it is like, I mean, I worked with you probably like 8 or 9 years ago. And I think for you guys who are in health and wellness too, sometimes when you start the work, it doesn't necessarily mean that you grasp what you're working on. You get it and you're like, okay, but you might need to take some time and go through some things and unpack some other stuff or whatever, before you really have the realization of like, oh, that's a thing. But one of my things is you're familiar with, probably everyone's familiar with emotional eating. And, you know, that's something that is very real. We work on it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm an emotional eater, and you might go through a whole program or whatever. And yeah, it was only probably a few years ago when I really did some deep work through my own stuff, changing my life, going through stuff. And I realized I'm an emotional shopper. Honestly, like, and it was definitely contributing to my financial situation and challenges. And it was like a really big realization to go, oh yeah, when I feel like this, and it wasn't just low, it was when I feel low, when I feel high. It was like, when I feel low, I need something to pick me up. When I feel high, I want to reward myself, or let's roll with this, you know? And yeah, since having that realization, like, it's actually like a simple, like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was doing that, an unconscious habit. It's just, it was crazy to me to go, holy crap, how did I not realize?
Yeah.
But I got
And
a
look,
great
you're
wardrobe,
not you're not the only one, and it's a very common thing. It's more common than you think, and it's all linked to dopamine, right? And all the
yeah. And I
about
think, like,
how the brain works.
yes. And so, and even on that, you know, in just even the work that I do too, is I don't think we don't realize how much of our actions run on emotion. Because I think what we tend to think is emotional being, oh, I'm crying a lot. But emotional is when you feel any kind of emotion, or revenge, or anger, or pride, or, you know, all this mental landscape stuff where I'm gonna, you know, success is the best revenge, or I'll show them, or I'm gonna, you know, like you mentioned earlier about with your family, like not wanting them to judge you in a certain way, or to cast something over you. So we emotionally, we're like, I can't let that happen. And it sets this chain reaction of behaviors. And we often don't link it back to the stories that are going on inside, like, because it all feels so real. So yeah, being able to get aware of that, and also very pragmatic about our finances, is just, yeah, to unhook the story from the actual
yeah.
the
And
spreadsheet.
it is a life's work. It's not something you can just you know, do a program and then all of a sudden you make these changes. You know, it's an ongoing exercise to want to improve in our lives, you know, personal development. And personal development is, personal development covers a lot of ground. And you might find that certain habits that you have with your food, you also have with your money. And yeah, I remember you got me to also do a food diary one time when we were working together many years ago, and I was absolutely horrified when I had to write down everything that
and I had the reverse with you, when you made me start using Xero and tracking every no cash, everything goes through your bank account so we can track it all. And I was like, oh.
yeah. It's like, I might as well just, you know, be naked in front of you right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very and a lot of people are like, they're
very
like
confronting.
It's like,
yeah.
So yeah, it is. And it's like, but at the same time, it's absolutely like refreshing to be able to not allow that power to remain over you by putting a spotlight on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So
it's not lurking and unconsciously controlling you anymore. You're actually,
and it's like that monster under the bed, right? That doesn't actually exist. You know, the monster under the bed is there when you're young, and you don't want to go to the toilet in the night in case it gets you by the legs. So but if you shine your torch under your bed, you'll see there actually is no monster there. So it's kind of the same analogy that, there may be a few skeletons in the closet and a few things lurking, but when you shine a light on them, you know, it starts to dissipate, and then you feel like you can move forward. Okay.
Yes, it empowers you to then make change, because the longer you don't confront it, or that you're unaware of your actual financial situation, the longer, it's lurking, and it's like, I don't want to look at it. And then when you look at it, you can get an accurate reading. This is where I'm at. Okay, these are the next steps I need to take to start feeling.
And actually, it's also that we're denying to ourselves, like we're our own, we're our own measurement, right? We know when we're not in harmony with things. We know when we're not facing things that we need to face, and you can get away with it for a little while, but ultimately it does catch up with us, and it just creates this niggling thing. And again, that's a sign of disharmony, you know, and that can come out in physical ailments too, right?
Yeah. And it's similar, and just for all of our health people here, it is similar to when you ignore an imbalance in your health, or something that is, it's not quite right. The longer you leave it, the more complex and challenging it is to face and to work with. So, and it's the same with our financial situation as well.
And one of the things is, for example, just coming back to the emotional shopping, one of the things with that is to figure out what it is that's triggering you. Find out what your triggers are, learn them, be able to step back and identify what they are, and don't be impulsive. Apply the 2-day rule. So if you want to buy something, go, right, I want to buy that thing, I want to buy that thing, and you're trying to
and another hot tip, do not consult your best friend when you're feeling the impulse, who will encourage you to purchase. She knows she'll be listening, and she'll hear, and she'll go, yes.
We all do it, don't worry. But yeah, if you can manage to, and it's all about learning about yourself, learning about what your triggers are. It's not to say that you can't buy things, but understand that it is a temporary situation, that you're trying to feel like, as you say, when you're feeling low or when you're feeling high. We want those rewards. We feel good. I do it. When I'm feeling good, I want to celebrate something. I'll just go and buy something, perhaps, or it may not be clothes, but I may go to food. I may go, right, I can have that chocolate cake because I've done this or that. So it's just working out what it is for you. But as I say, more than that, let's come back to some more sort of specific money. Do you have any more sort of specific money questions that you want to go through?
Segueing now into the next question is, yes, like I think, because I want to round up signing off with some key principles to take away, but I really wanted to take the opportunity to ask you if you could just comment a little on the cost of living at the moment post-pandemic. It's just, life feels really challenging for our homeowners here. Interest rates have gone up. Cost of living has gone up. Petrol, food, everything has gone up. And we don't really see relief in that our income has necessarily gone up either. So I think this is where financial education, I think, is really important, in that there's got to be something that we can do to feel less like disempowered from the situation that we all find ourselves in. Is there any tips that you have, or can you speak to the value of having a bit of financial literacy during this time? Like, what key principles would you suggest that could support us through this challenging time?
Yes, it's a massive, massive question. There are a lot of different parts to that. I suppose, firstly, I would like to say that we're all subject to, obviously, the cost of living, no matter who you are and what you do. There's no doubt that the cost of living has gone up exponential over the last year. Interest rates have gone up, probably 10 times in 12 months. And just today, they've left interest rates on hold again. So I think, if it's any consolation to anyone who has got a home loan, we are pretty much at the top of the rate cycle. But what you've got to understand is that money and markets, financial markets, excuse me, money and financial markets ebb and flow. And it's the cycle, it's a cycle. It goes up, it goes down. And what we have to learn to do is ride out the difficult times and, ride high on the good times. And so financial education plays such an important part in this, because you can get to this point now where you're really struggling and start thinking, right, I need to actually learn these principles. But what my view is that this sort of stuff needs to get taught to people, so that when hard times do hit, you're in a position where you've got some resilience and where you've got some buffers, so that you're not impacted to such a degree that it's affecting every other part of your life. Because we all know how many people have separated during this time. We all know the stress of people having to get extra jobs. And yes, you may need to do that, but what we need to do is play defense in these times and protect what we have at all costs. So if you have a home, you do whatever it takes to keep it. That is like, it's not negotiable. And I've been pushed in times, and I've been here before. I've seen this before, because I lived through the GFC when I had investments and a business through the GFC. So I've actually had and seen interest rates higher than this. And of course, our parents and their parents have seen them ridiculously a lot higher. So, in the scheme of things, they're not actually that high compared to where they have been in the past. And so what we need to do is go, right, this is going to happen again. I've seen this before. History repeats itself. you know, there's ebbs and flows, and we need to start living more harmoniously with the cycles of what happens in our economy and in our environment. But one thing I can tell you is that no matter how much money you earn, you're going to spend all of that and more. And no matter how much more you earn, inflation is going to keeping up with you. And so you might think that you're earning more money, but the cost of living is just going to continue to rise. And so the answer to that is to invest in assets that outperform inflation. That is the biggest takeaway. If you want to create a financial future that's stable and you've got something you can leave to your children and not fall into that poverty trap and end up living in your car, which I've seen, and it happens and it's real, then today is the time to make a decision that that's not going to be you, and you're going to do whatever it takes to make a change. And it's possible, and it's available to all of us, and we are living in the lucky country. I can't tell you, like, if you've traveled, if you've gone anywhere outside of Australia, you will know that this country is one of the best countries to live in the world, bar none, right? It is so, there's so much opportunity here. People are flocking here, they're coming here. We've got population increase, we've got a lack of supply of housing. So if there's any time to invest in property, I can't give advice to you personally without knowing your circumstances, but there's never a wrong or a bad time to start your investment journey. But it just takes some education, and it takes a little bit of desire to want to better yourself financially, have a more harmonious relationship with money. It's not to say, I'm not sitting here saying that having money or having investments is going to be the answer to your prayers and it's going to make you happy for the rest of your life and that's it. But it's proven that people that have got something behind them have less chances of living in poverty, have less chances of having relationship breakdowns, have less chances of this constant stress that we're facing because they can't meet their basic utility bills, they can't buy food, they can't, and you know, people in poverty can't buy nutritious food, and so then that causes a knock-on effect to their health and obesity and all those kinds of things all come back to you know, the money inside the home and how that home is being run, and part of how you run a household is having a household budget and making sure that you are living within your means. Because if you're spending more than you're earning, you might not see the problem now, but it will start to compound. You know, it's that slight edge effect. Everything that you do compounds over time. And what's the trajectory? Is it going up or is it going down? And so those are the questions that you need to start to consider. And so I don't want to tell anyone to do anything, but I just urge you to really take this seriously, because there's so much opportunity available. You know, we live in a very wealthy country. We've got, you know, if you own one or more properties, you're in the top 2% of the wealthiest people in the world. You know, we just don't realize what's on our doorstep. And I think everybody's got the obligation to make an effort to better themselves and better themselves for their families and their future. And also, you know, we need to pay for our aged care. None of us have got enough in super to keep us going. I mean, we're all living longer, so we need those resources in our later years, so that we have got the right care that we need. And where do I end? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just ranting here, but I feel quite passionate about it, and I just feel like everybody here is you've got such opportunity. Let's grab it, let's take it by the horns, you know.
And I think too, on that, it could be also, again, like if you haven't grown up with awareness around an asset, like that wasn't a common thing in our household. My family have all been very successful in their careers, but never really talked about assets, other than my dad telling me on my 17th birthday, if you buy that little Renault, that's a liability. It's going to cost you money year after year. Forget traveling. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm off. And I went traveling instead. And I was like, thank you for, you know, that. But that was kind of it. And so I guess what I'm hearing you say is that, and what I'm sort of piecing together too in sharing the opportunity is there, that if we have a little bit of understanding about finance and how it can work for us, in that we don't just live to our means all the time. We do pay ourselves first. We put some money aside, and that money can be put into even small assets or a small side business, shares, property, whatever it might be. I'm just thinking for anyone on the call who's thinking, okay, property, but like you might not be ready to go there yet. But if say, for example, you did put 5-10K aside each year that was going into assets that would compound and grow over time, there's, where else would that money have gone? It could be just frittered away on living to your means, and you don't even notice that extra $250 you spend on food each week because you're just living a good life. Whereas having financial awareness, some of the principles that you will be talking about towards the end of the call, putting some money aside, putting some money into assets, whatever that might be, is building a more stable future for yourself. Because I think that was a really, really big thing that I learned from you and the books that you recommended. It was the first time I'd heard it, that, because I grew up and it's just like, oh, I earn this much, but those people have all of this money. But for me, it was like, it wasn't even a question of how do I get from there to there. It was, this is my lot in life. That's their lot in life. I had absolutely no idea about assets, investing, compounding, So anyway, I just wanted to share that when you say, thinking about your future as well, or thinking about building assets, it's not just living to your means, and it's not just maybe that one sole income and thinking, okay, that's it, we just save for the rest of our life. There are actually strategies for getting your money to work for you. Even, one of the stories, and I think, was it Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Yeah. Where he shares on even the father who wasn't super wealthy, who followed the principles, was able to build wealth. I might be getting my stories crossed, but you know what I mean? So it's not that people with more privilege can only have financial stability. If you learn how to make money work for you, and if you understand the science of money, just like if you understand the science of health and how it can help you build energy and stamina and immunity by making sensible choices with your food, or exercise or sleep, it's the same with money. Once you actually understand the science of money and how to make it work for you, there's opportunity for leverage there versus just living to your means each week and feeling like you're stuck on the hamster wheel, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not something that you should feel ashamed of because you want to have some assets, or that you want to work towards your future.
Because I think, just on that too, like one of the realizations too was that it's just like with good health. You might have not poor health, but kind of mediocre, and you don't really have much energy, and you don't feel very comfortable in your body. You have a few little niggles here and there, but you put in a little bit of extra effort, more than is just required, and then all of a sudden you have this exponential sense of well-being and energy and feeling more connection with others, and you're feeling like you have this joie de vivre kind of thing going on. And it's the same with, it can be the same with finance as well, is that it's not just, okay, I'm all in and that's all I'm thinking about, I'm going to make money. It's okay, with a little bit more self-awareness, a little bit effort, and making like different choices. Almost in some cases, if you're just talking about a slight improvement, same amount of effort, but applied more strategically over a period of time, can take you on a completely different trajectory financially versus going, oh, I don't know, and just doing the same thing over and over again, which doesn't have any strategy or intentional outcome.
Yeah, and that's why I recommend The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. It's an amazing book, and you can apply that in any facet of your life. Obviously, I teach finance, so we're talking about that, but just if you haven't read it, read it. It's amazing.
All of my students that's my number one book that I'm like, Annette, you recommended this, you got to read it. And everyone always comes back to me and they're like, so good.
Yeah. And it's a time, you have to apply the time, you have to put in the effort, and it's a slow thing, and it's compounding. But like the graph shows, you know, it's slow at first. And it's kind of like if I stop going to the gym for a little while, or whatever, stop eating healthily, or I stop watering my flowers, I won't die straight away. But if I do that over a long period of time, like on the weekend, I was potting a mandarin tree. We've got 2 mandarin trees. I used to be into feng shui, so I had 2 mandarin trees at the entrance to my house, and one of them got moved while we renovated a few years ago, and it was only just on the weekend that we brought it back down. We're like, oh my goodness, you know, the mandarin tree, and it hadn't died. I don't know how, because it hadn't been watered and we had no rain. But the other mandarin tree that we have looked after has got all the new buds on it, the bees around it. It's going to produce fruit like nothing else. But the tree that we brought down, it's not dead, right? And it's kind of surviving.
Existing.
It's not happy, it's not flourishing, and it's not going to produce fruit anytime soon. See the analogy?
Yeah.
And all I had to do with this other one was just prune it a little bit, water it a little bit, put some good soil around it, and then I get the fruit. So, but I don't spend my entire day watering it and tending to it. I just do it a little bit. I do that a little bit, and I do this a little bit, but I do it regularly and I'm consistent. And so that's where the gold is. It's not like all of a sudden I'm going to get this thing, or all of a sudden that's going to happen. It's a gradual,
or that it completely consumes your entire consciousness, because I think that's probably, in naivety, what we might think is that, oh, to have financial stability, to get from where I am to get to, you know, financial stability or improvement, it's going to take over my consciousness, you know. But it's very practical. It's just a slight behavior, some behavior changes.
Yeah, correct. And we live in this we're in the real world. We have to live here. We need shelter, we need clothes, we need food, you know, we need to survive in this world. And so you have to, money is a part of that, whether you like it or not. So it's just a case of accepting that and going, right, I can actually change, and I can actually create a much more harmonious and healthy relationship with my money. Where do I need to start? What do I need to do? And it's not, don't allow it to become so overwhelming that you don't sort of get started, and just know that it's not going to happen overnight, and it's a gradual process. But if you take some small baby steps towards it, it's a great start, and that's where things will start to unfold, you know. And be kind to yourself about it, you know, be kind to yourself, and don't beat yourself up about things that you might have done that you feel like ashamed of. We've all come from somewhere. We've all made really bad mistakes. I have as well. And, you know, sometimes you can sit there and go, oh, why did I do that? Or I lost money over here, and oh, whatever, you know, and you can just sit in that and wallow in it, or go, okay, I'm going to learn from that. And that's where the gold is too. It's like going, okay, mistakes are actually good, because they teach us what we need to know. But it's only if you make that mistake over and over again that you're kind of like, okay, what's going on here? You know? So
but before we go on to talking about habits and stuff, can I just ask, because we do have quite a few homeowners I know in our community, do you have any tips for the rise in interest rates at the moment for homeowners, how to navigate that? Any gold nuggets?
Well, look, I mean, if we bring it back to basics, I'll come to the interest rates in a minute, but if we come back to basics, I would suggest that people need to start to know where their money goes. Like, how much is it actually costing you? Have a look at it. Some people don't know what it's actually costing, whether it's your home loan or whether it's your insurance and things like that. And look at it, get your statements and actually look at it and say, okay, what is my interest rate, and is there anything I can do with it? So sometimes you can actually ring up your lender and say, look, I really need you to look at what's the best you can do on this. So you just can ring them up and negotiate. I do that in our business a lot for clients, and it can work. They're not always going to move, but sometimes they do. And unfortunately, we pay a loyalty tax. So a lot of lenders have they'll advertise attractive rates for new customers, and yet they won't apply the same discounts to their existing customers. It is hard to switch because the assessment rates are so high at the moment for loans. But what I would say is you call them and you tell them, look, I'm struggling. I need you to help me here. I need some relief. What can you do on my rate? You know, and I'm not saying you threaten to leave, but because it's very hard to at the moment. But you know, I've looked around, there's some much better options out there for me. So you can do that. First of all, talk to your lender. They're usually pretty good. They want to keep you as a customer. So have that conversation, be confident when you phone them.
I actually recall we did this with my credit card back in the day. And I was like, oh my God, it worked. We got my interest rate down a little bit. It was,
oh, did we? That's cool.
yeah.
yeah, that's what you can do.
And I just would never have thought to ask. It was just, fantastic.
A lot of people are in the same boat, so you can ask. So negotiate, ask for a better deal. You just never know where it's going to end. Talk about the fees and charges as well, and what can you do, and things like that on it. There's a fly in here. The other thing is to know what it's costing you. As I say, take a step back, look at what's coming into the household, look at what's going out of the household, and look at everything that you could maybe negotiate on. So for example, I've had clients who have looked at their insurance, because insurance, like they're telling us that that inflation has been around that 7%, but I'm telling you right now that insurance and all the other cost of things have gone up by nearly 20% in a lot of cases. And so what you can do is, again, you can look around and see what else is available. But the other thing you can do is just check, like, let's just say you've got a car insured, and check, is it insured for the right amount? If it's insured for, say, an agreed amount, maybe your car is not worth that anymore, so you're actually over-insuring it. And the other thing you can do, if you feel you're able, is you could maybe increase the excess. If you feel that if you needed to pull on it, you could afford to pay the excess, obviously. So these are just some ideas. I'm not giving advice because I don't know your circumstances, but every single bill that comes in, and if you feel like there's, you're struggling, I would be contacting the provider and asking them what you can do. And that's the advice that they'll give. Like, well, maybe you can increase your excess. Maybe you're over-insured for your car. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Obviously, you have to do the research and do the work on that. Same with your home loan we just talked about. What other bills do people struggle with? What are the other main bills that you guys struggle with? Obviously, housing, transport is a big one. Downsize your car. Like, everybody's so attached to their car. If you've got a car that is too big and you don't need it, downsize it. If you're a household with multiple cars, we downsized to one car. That's our circumstances, because we work from home, and the other person, if it's inconvenient, gets an Uber, and that is cheaper than getting a second insurance, maintenance, rego, tires, servicing, you name it, right? So there is those kinds of things, and you can be lean in lean times, because you know that those lean times aren't going to last forever, and things will.
That's what I was going to say, which speaks to what you were saying earlier, knowing that it's a season, not feeling defeated. It's just you're holding on to this asset that is going to be, in the long haul, completely worth a few little tweaks and sacrifices until the belt loosens a little bit, and then you can go back to picking up some of those nice to haves again. Because I think isn't it so true as well that we get so accustomed to the way that we live that it almost becomes like you can't consciously comprehend having
that thing. Yes.
But actually you'd be completely fine. That's been one of my little on repeat things is need or want, and I'm like, need or want, and I physically imagine myself without that thing, and can I live? And if I can live, it's like, okay, let it go, like, because of my financial goals at the moment. And
nice distinction. That's perfect. Need or want. And that's something, again, that I was taught from a young age. Do you need it, or do you just want it? If you just want it, just forget it. That was what I was taught. So I had to really negotiate hard about how much I needed this thing. So we know in ourselves that we can go without certain things. And that's another trap, is that when you earn more money, your lifestyle also increases with your income. And so it's a cycle. We earn more, we spend more. And so can you increase your income without increasing your expenses? Bar, obviously, cost of living and things like that. And also, if your income goes up, then really you should be paying yourself more as well, because we always talk in percentage terms as well. So it's not like, well, I'm just doing $100 a week. It's a percentage of your income. And so as your income increases, so does your capacity to save for investing. And having an emergency or a buffer fund is vital in today's world, because emergencies come at us all the time, and they're not maybe seen as an emergency, but there are things that come up all the time that people don't think that's going to happen. And what tends to then happen is, we all have but I've got savings, it's fine. And I don't like the word savings because it doesn't mean anything. It's like, well, saving for what? What are you saving for? You know, you need to define what it is. You need to define and have an actual goal around what it is that you're saving for. You need to have an amount that you're saving, and you need to have rules and discipline around it. And then you've got more capacity to leave that thing alone when an emergency comes along. But if you've got no emergency money or any buffers, you're going to tap into your savings that was for a holiday, a car, a house, doesn't matter what it is. And so having that emergency or that buffer account is probably the number one thing, right? Followed by, that's probably number one. The second one is to, as much as possible, get rid of high interest debt. Credit cards. 22% is the average rate on a credit card. It's like daylight robbery.
That's mind-blowing.
Absolutely daylight robbery. People get into a trap and they can't get out of it. And so what I would suggest, there's lots of different things. I've got a debt reduction program, but what the first thing I would say to you is to, if you can't consolidate it into a personal loan that has a term and you have to pay it off over 7 years or something, for example, then at least as you start to gradually pay it off, reduce the limit. Because what people do is they'll pay it down, but then they'll draw it back up again and they'll just use it like a line of credit. It's just absolutely, it's a wealth killer is what a credit card is, unless you pay it off each month. So you've really got to work on getting that. And then you can start to put your investment savings account together and start working towards building some assets so that you can hedge against inflation and build a more sustainable financial future.
Well, one thing, and just like maybe round out on that, and then I'll sum it up with one more question too, is just hearing all of that too, the conversation that we are having today is because all of my peer group, professionally and personally, we're talking about the cost of living, the pinch, we're all feeling it. And it's in these times that we learn. So it's like you were saying about going through the hard times too, and finding a way to work through it. Like, we wouldn't be having these great educational conversations perhaps if everything was hunky-dory and everything was financially, you know, maybe we'd be a bit skimming on the surface, superficial with our finances. Whereas, yeah, you know, having these difficult times, just like with our health as well, then we question things, we self-reflect, we get everything out on the table. And then as we work through the hard times, then you come away with all this new financial understanding and habits. And so it does actually then become almost like the trigger that helped you create that. The hard time when you felt at your lowest is actually an opportunity to go, okay, you know, how am I going to build, like you said, a sustainable future from where I'm at now, which can be just a really wonderful turning point. So let's
and that's where the resilience comes in. These are the hard times. They're actually, in a way, I don't like them either, but if you can take anything out of it, it helps to build resilience, and it helps you to build that resolve that you kind of need to make it in this crazy world, you know?
Yeah. And so what would be some key habits, like for anyone, so for all of us, general guiding kind of financial principles or habits that you find yourself recommending to your clients, to when people ask you straight off the bat, you know, no matter what circumstances they're in, what are your general go-to principles with cash flow management and money management?
First of all, we all know the cost of living is going up, but do we actually know what that means for us? So it's easy to say, throw it out there, yeah, interest rates are rising, cost of living is rising, and it is, it's true. But what does that actually mean for you? So I would say to somebody who just doesn't really know, because most people don't know where their money goes. So that's a really good place to start. It's really empowering. It's like having a food diary where you write down, you know, if you get paid fortnightly, write down for the next 14 days everything where your money's going, and understand what it is costing you to live, to survive. So housing, food, all your basics, right? Because we all need basics to survive. And then we've got our more sort of, you know, other things like phone bills and utilities, and we've got all those things as well. And then on top of that, we've got more of our discretionary expenses. And those are the things that in tough times have to go. It's just a reality of it. You know, we need to survive. We need to eat. We need to pay the rent or the mortgage. And so I don't need that extra pair of jeans, or I don't need all these other things that before I was able to afford. So bring yourself back to your baseline and work out, what is my baseline? How much does it cost me to live? And then from there, you can start to look at how much then is coming into the household and what's the gap, if there is one. And if there is a gap, okay, now I know what the gap is. What can I do to bridge that gap? And of course, just like in a business, if you're not profitable, i.e. your turnover is great, but your expenses are higher, then you're going to have a negative position at the bottom of the line. So think of yourself as a business. You've got a profit and loss. You bring money into the household. Money goes out of the household. What's left over? And it's usually nothing or negative. Okay, great. That's not sustainable. So what can we do to plug the gap? And in a business, businesses can either learn to either earn more income, or they can cut back their expenses, or they can do a combination of both. So if you need to, you've kind of got to know, you've got to kind of do the exercise to know, first of all, what the gap is, if there is one. And second of all, what can you do to bridge the gap? So like I said, can you find a side hustle for now? Doesn't have to be forever. Can you get that part-time job? Can you do a few extra hours? There's so many opportunities now for putting our services online, like Airtasker. We can pet sit, we can Airbnb out one of our rooms. You know, there's just so many choices and things that we could do. You just got to find what works for you, what works for your lifestyle, and just know that it doesn't have to be forever, but just to get you through this glut. And the other thing is, interest rates are going to come down, right? And I haven't got a crystal ball, but all the signs are there that we're at the top of we're at the peak. Inflation is coming down. And so therefore they don't have to keep tightening. They might keep them, you know, fairly high for a while, but ultimately if we get into recession and things go pear-shaped and employment shoots up, they're going to have to start cutting rates again. So good times will follow. We don't know when that is, but you've just got to hang tight and do what you can during these hard times to get through. And that's, again, where resilience is built. There's opportunities. Now's a really good time to invest in property. Like I said, there's an undersupply in this country. There's more and more people coming to this country. We don't have enough houses. It's a supply and demand. It's a simple supply and demand thing. So it's like we need people to buy houses to house people that can't afford to get their own house. So there's opportunity there. And so start to think, am I willing to give up something today for my tomorrow? Ask that question of yourself. If the answer is no, that's fine too. But if the answer is yes, then let's do something. Let's help you towards that. You know, there's a lot we can do. It won't happen overnight, but I learned the hard way. I had to learn it myself. Yeah, I had a few little bits of snippets of help along the way. I read a lot of books. I put in the time and effort. I actually spent a lot of money, or invested, I should say, a lot of money in my own education, I went to seminars, I went to programs, I've done coaching, you name it. You know, I've done so much stuff. So I should be something that's gone in somewhere, you know?
And then finally too, what's your number one book recommendation? If somebody's starting out with finance, would it be, my guess would be Rich Dad Poor Dad or Slight Edge?
No, it's actually Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, so The Richest Man in Babylon is by George S. Clason, and it was written in the 1920s, and it has 7 personal finance principles in there. And in my program, I summarize it and we do some work around that. But it's a small book, so it's easy to read, and it's kind of set in sort of 1920s time frame. So the language is a bit flowery, but
it's a story too. So it's like
a story. It's a parable. Yeah. So it's a parable. So it's written in olden day language, but it has some of the most timeless principles that you could ever learn about personal finance. That would be a great place to start.
Awesome. Fantastic. So I'm very, very grateful for everything you've shared today. Thank you. And yes, as you guys heard me mention, we worked together many years ago when I was just starting my business, and I was super grateful. It's been life-changing for me. And as I mentioned too throughout this session, that I still have like moments of grasping things that I know that you've told me before, and I'm like, and you do get the occasional message from me probably every 6 to 12 months being like, I'm doing this now, or I've just reached this milestone, or so. And it's not, and I think too, like this is something we talk about personally too, that being open to talking about finances and stuff. I know nothing, like you've seen my Xero and everything, but it's not like we talk about this much money or this many properties or whatever. We talk about our habit management and our own paradigm for success, that we have reached our little goals, or we did manage to, I managed to not do this, or to break through my emotional spending, or to, so I think, it's been really cool to have that relationship where there's that mutual understanding of peer support, where we can openly talk about finances, still maintain, privacy in our own financial situations, but at the same time, it's not an off the table conversation. And I think that's just been a really wonderful thing about our relationship beyond even coaching. But I know definitely anyone who works with you will benefit so much from having that closed space too, where you can finally be with someone, where get it all out on the table, there's no judgment, and have that professional space where you've got, like you said, an older sister that's been through it all and can help to have those difficult conversations with you, to bring everything to light, to help you get to a position of balance and empowerment with your finances, and create a paradigm for financial success. Because I think that's different for everybody as well. And that's what I love about working with you, is that it's not all the glitz and glamour of money. It's like, okay, what does success look like to you? What are your goals? What's your situation? And it's very grounded in that sense. So thank you for all of your knowledge over the years, and all of your willingness to share, and your openness. And I'd like to hand it over now to anyone who's on the call who might have any questions for Annette.
Or feedback. We've got a few
feedback. We've got a few Cashflow Masters here.
We do. Just unmute yourself if you want to have a chat.
I can't believe to see Annette and Sammy, at the same time. Like, you've really played a big part in my life and making such big changes. And it was through Sammy I came along to one of these talks, and I thought, oh, I'm just so ashamed. I'm embarrassed. I'm an older lady and I'm in a mess. And so I reached out, and Annette and I started, and it was that shame of showing her my, my budget and everything like that. But now, like, it's really, my life has changed. My thoughts around finances has changed. I'm feeling really positive and really moving forward. And the difference, the way I think about money, I sort of grown up, I don't know, just shameful or embarrassed about it. Whereas now, it's just great. Like, I was always scared to open up my account because I thought, oh, it's going to be, in the deficit, or it's going to be this, or, whereas, and I just didn't know, when we have to go through, how much insurance do you pay? I don't know. And now, like, I'm really familiar with what I do and where the money goes. So a huge thank you to both of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ruth. We love you.
Yeah, you've come leaps and bounds. I'm just so proud of you. And being able to build assets. And this is a single lady, so none of us have got any excuses. Single lady in her 50s. She's got 2 properties, and she's killing it.
Killing it.
Sorry, am I allowed to share that? Sorry, I should have asked. Yeah, amazing. I knew she'd be all right with it, because I think we need to celebrate success. And one of Ruth's things was not if someone said, oh, well, why have you got 2 properties, and she would sort of freeze like a rabbit in headlights, like, oh, how am I going to answer that? Because she felt embarrassed. And then we worked on that and how she could rephrase how she answers that question. And so that was
I had to justify myself, because I'd been brought up that sort of with, I had no financial education. I had no financial literacy. And so, when people sort of said to me, I try and explain, or I felt that I had to justify myself, or, I just go on and on. Whereas now, no, I've got 2 properties and I'm okay with that, because I've worked really hard. So, so it's really good.
Yeah, awesome. Wonderful. Thanks, Ruth. Good job.
And Megan or Megan, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it. Did you want
Hi,
to say something?
I'm looking all hot and sweaty because I'm actually sitting in a sauna.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
And I say I can't wait to be like the lady that shared and have 2 properties or more. And I don't know if there's anyone else in the group that's been someone who's an abundant creator. Me, I am, but I've actually sacrificed my earning capacity because I'm a mother of 4 kids, ranging from 6 to nearly 18. And I'm constantly that person that's sacrificing my time, my energy, my entrepreneurial spirit because I'm stuck in this loop of kids, washing, woolies, everything. And I've now day 12 or 13 of being away from my home because my youngest has just had his tonsils out. And when I go back, I'm not giving away my time because I need to put in practice all the stuff, whether it be Rich Dad, Poor Dad, whether it be The Richest Man in Babylon. I've had all this stuff for so long, but unless you put it into practice, you're like at the Bowser at the petrol station or you're at the Woolies going, am I going to get through? And it's exhausting because we're like a one-wage family and my hubby doesn't have like the spirit to make money like I do. And I earned more money than him 25 years ago. So thank you for today. I've been on mute because I've literally been at my girlfriend's house and folding her socks and all of that stuff. So I've listened to everything, but I've just come on board. So I'm looking forward to finding out more about, your course. And I hope everyone that listened today, I hope you all go make it, whatever we
Yeah.
do. Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan. That's
I'm
amazing.
enjoying being hot and sweaty.
I love that. And we can just be comfortable in our own
Yeah.
skin and what we're
Yeah,
doing,
yeah.
where we are, and we can have an open conversation about money. It's so refreshing, isn't it?
I look forward to having my own sauna at my house. All right, thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Megan.
Bye.
Yeah, amazing.
Oh, any other questions or chimes in of any kind?
Yeah, I'll say something. I'm also unintentional, like I didn't plan this, but I'm representing Live to Serve.
Bring it.
I've
T-shirt.
I've got to get some t-shirts.
Yeah.
a catchy tagline. I've been working with Annette for 4 months actually, and it's just mind-blowing how much my mindset has changed around things. And I'll give you a really quick background. I have read, like in the past, I've read sort of and grabbed a hold of books about finance, and I've been really interested in being educated on being financially sustained and doing well like that. But anyway, go back about 5 years, my husband and I went through some serious hardship, and that took a real toll on how I thought we would ever come back from that financially, and started thinking about that in the last year again, and then listened to a call that Annette did with Sammy last year, and I thought, yeah, this is the missing piece of the puzzle, is that I need someone to coach me through this process. And what I didn't realize was all of the tools that would come with the process that would help me understand, like the savings is not just like this one account. You just put stuff in and you go, well, I've got savings. And like we would get savings and then they'll be like, and down, down, the car broke, or there's all these expenses. And then it's just like, and you just, anyway, it feels like the road to nowhere. But with the tools that Annette shares, it's starting to make a lot more sense now, and it's actually been really good for my marriage as well. So because we sat down together and set our goals together, and we have like a structure around our finances. So highly recommend so far, and all the best.
Thank
So
you.
good to
That's
hear.
amazing. Yes, I just love that.
And it
Feels so-
almost like I'm
really
almost
warms my
thinking
heart.
too that hearing the effect or the impact on a relationship too, it's almost like the finances are like the nervous system of a relationship, because it's so reactive. It can be so reactive, but when it's regulated, then everything else is like quite harmonious and less reactive too, because when you're going like this all the time and there's no so that's really interesting.
And we've like one of the things is we have like this big bills account, and like we just got back from being away, and like our other car just decided to have problems yesterday, and I was like, and we took it in to get looked at, and I was like, it's okay, Trevor, we've got money in the big bills account.
So good.
We pay for it without drawing from our savings, you know. So anyway, that's it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Amazing. That's really nice. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Louise. Love it.
Very cool.
Is anyone else?
I'll share my one. Well, I've had lots and lots of takeaways, but I remember when we were working together and we were right in it and we got everything out on the table. And like Megan shared, I'm a parent of 4 kids too, and financially supporting them. And I remember when we finally loaded up Xero, laid everything out on the table. And then once I could see everything, and I think the yogini in me was like, oh, I don't need to want for more money, which is fine. Like, it's all good and well to not be ambitious or to not have that as like the highest thing that I want to earn more money or whatever. But I think I was like imbalanced or like a little bit delulu in that area, that actually no, what Xero showed us when we laid everything out was like, no, you're not earning enough money to keep this whole situation going with your family. And it was like, oh, okay, I need to earn more money. And it was just like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And so took business a lot more seriously, took myself a little bit more seriously. And basically changed the direct trajectory of my finances just with that insight, looking at things objectively, not making up stories in my head about whether it's correct or right or emotionally or spiritually okay to earn more money or not. It was like, you got 4 kids to support and you need to make ends meet, like, and then like all the savings account or like rainy days or hard times or whatever. And it was just so matter of fact that it was no question. You need to take that seriously and you need to like earn more money. Cool. Okay. And that was super empowering to drop all the stories and drop all the fears and insecurities about should I or shouldn't I make more money, and go, okay, I'm gonna make more money. Cool. Let's do this.
And then you went out and you did it.
And then Live to Serve Academy was born. No, it was way before then. But yeah, it did. Like I really was so matter of fact.
But I think it also gave you just that little bit of a push in the right direction and some confidence to go, actually I can do this. I know what I need to do and I'm just going to go and do it.
Yes.
And sometimes we procrastinate or overthink it, or
overthinking or sweep it under the rug and think, oh, it's not that bad, or whatever multiple stories I had going on. It was just, it just wiped everything out. And it was super matter of fact and like, okay, we're going to do that. And now it's the same. It's absolutely the same in that I track everything financially with spreadsheets and Xero, and always check every day, never sweep anything under the rug. And I can tell, I get that icky feeling too when I am, even if I am going through a bit of it's going to be a tight month. I find that I am less inclined to track and less inclined to put it on my spreadsheet, because it's just like, but it's getting into the habit of like, no, it's okay. Confront however you're feeling, however it makes you feel. You still got to show up and deal with the reality of your financial situation, because ignoring it or making up stories in my head did not help my situation. Whereas the more awareness I have of it, the more it kept me motivated to like stay on top of things and to find solutions, rather than being like, oh, the monster under the bed.
and what's key there is that you've actually dissolved, by doing that, you've dissolved the hold that it has over you.
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing.
Cool.
All
right. Well, I reckon we should sign off here because it's 6. It's getting a bit late, but thank you, Annette. Big claps and hugs from all of us. Thank you everyone for joining us as well. And for anyone who's listening back, I'm going to email this out and I'll put links to where you can find Annette as well. And this will be up on YouTube. You can replay as well and go back over anything. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
you.
Sammy.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye.
Bye.